I've been lucky, and I know it. I've ridden the best roads and the best racetracks in the world. I've hung out with outlaws. Actually, those are my in-laws. And I've befriended hospital staff in a number of non-English speaking countries. Ouch. But there's one thing I haven't done. Until now. El Camino is brought to you by Yamaha, revs your heart. Importations Thibault, distributor of power sports parts and accessories. And by GP Bikes, Canada's power sports authority. Welcome to El Camino. It's human nature to go to extremes. It's why we climb Everest and not Pakistan's nearly as high K2. It's why 5'7" accountants drive Dodge Rams. And it's why certain men fork out $110,000 for Harley-Davidson's race replica bagger, which, incidentally, rides on bias-plied tires, just like Grandpa's Coupe de Ville. But none of these work for me. Altitude gives me nausea, massive pickup trucks give me, well, they give me nausea too. And if I had 110 grand to blow, I'd be in Belize before daybreak. Here's my version of extreme. I've always wanted to ride a motorcycle in India, specifically in Delhi, a city with a population equal to that of the entire population of Canada. Delhi has 40 million sari-wearing, sitar-loving souls who drive cars and ride motorcycles with gleeful disrespect for law and order. They're my kind of people. And who doesn't love the sitar? You'd be right to ask why, in Shiva's name, would I want to ride in one of the most polluted and congested cities in the world? Mount Everest again. You climb it because it's the tallest, and you ride in Delhi because it's the craziest. Well, first I needed a motorcycle, and the choice was obvious. A Royal Enfield, a brand with an inspiringly bizarre backstory. Way back in 1901 in Worcestershire, is that right? Worcestershire, England, you know, the birthplace of that nasty sauce, the Enfield Cycle Company began production of motorcycles, which makes Royal Enfield the longest continuously produced motorcycle brand in the world. Longer than Harley-Davidson, and long before Indian's birth, way back in our year of the Lord, 2011. Oops, that's actually Indian's prequel. That's a victory. India gained its independence from the colonizing fist of England in 1947. And in 1952, the Indian government went looking for a suitable motorcycle for the army to patrol its borders. And what could be better for use in remote regions than Enfield's Bronze Age 350 Bullet? A motorcycle just slightly more sophisticated than an anvil. The Indian government ordered 800 bullets from the UK, and 3 years later, in 1955, Indian company Madras Motors obtained the rights to produce the bullet in India under license. Now, here's where the backstory takes a twist. Back home in England, Royal Enfield, along with the rest of the English motorcycle industry, collapsed under the weight of its collective hubris. Royal Enfield, the one from the nasty sauce place, went bust, but the plant in India kept going and continued the formula of making simple, virtually indestructible motorcycles at friendly prices. Royal Enfield kept chugging, and today it keeps on chugging. And Royal Enfield isn't a boutique manufacturer. If you combine the sales of Harley-Davidson, Indian, BMW, KTM, and Ducati, you're still far short of the nearly 1 million Royal Enfields made every year. And in a delicious twist, the most English motorcycle in the world, sorry Triumph, comes from a former colony. How's that for sticking it to the man? This segment is brought to you by Yamaha. Welcome back to El Camino. The taxi trip from the Delhi airport to my hotel was eye-opening. I couldn't understand how there weren't dozens of fatalities every block. It was like a NASCAR race on black ice. And yet somehow Delhi traffic kept flowing. I confess I've been guilty of overusing the phrase, "it was like a video game," to describe anything chaotic. But Indian traffic is like a video game. If there's more than the width of your nose between your vehicle and the next vehicle, then you've met a tourist, because no way would a local leave that much space. India, said a young man to me, is not for beginners. He wasn't joking. India is like being locked in the trunk of a Hyundai with 15 people. And then one of those 15 says, "Oh, I've lost a contact lens." And because Indians are unfailingly polite, everyone dives down to look for the lens at the bottom of the trunk. And if you've ever imagined playing Twister with a giant bee, oh look, it's a thing, then you're on your way to understanding how 1.5 billion Indians coexist. This is not the land of lily-white suburbs with double garages and half-again too big pickup trucks. In India, you come face to face with the reality that we live on a planet with a lot of people. Before I arrived in India, I put out the word in the street that I wanted to ride with locals. But our hosts were concerned, due to my lack of Indian riding experience, that I'd become one of the subcontinent's 75,000 annual two-wheeled fatalities. Now, one more death to a number that big isn't really much to cause a stir. Except if that death is to a guy who hosts a TV show. Now that's bad for business. So instead of riding from my Delhi hotel, I was picked up by a car and driven to the outskirts of the city where I'd meet my Royal Enfield and my riding posse. I was feeling slightly emasculated. I'd make up for that later. Now, have I mentioned that India's hot, as in hot tub on an August afternoon hot? Before we hit the road, we stood around a long time at our meeting point. Now, some of this is because of the complications that filming brings, and some of it was because it's India. I'd noticed that everywhere we went, there were too many people doing too few tasks. At the hotel restaurant, servers outnumbered diners. Even the film crew itself had enough members to make 2 cricket squads. When you have 1.5 billion people in a country, you have extras, extra people. Without exception, everyone was kind and capable. Well, there was one exception. We had a taxi driver keen on driving us to Tibet, despite our guide's impassioned plea for him to drive us to our destination. Words were exchanged, hands were waved, threats were made. But by then we were halfway to Tibet. Finally, when the sun was high enough to turn our brains to poached eggs, we rode away. This was my first time in a Royal Enfield, a used but not entirely used up Interceptor 650. I fell in line somewhere in the middle of the pack that included bikes that ranged from a 250 Honda single to a couple of Harleys. As we rode out of the city and the highway, my newfound friends were determined to treat me like royalty. They surrounded me. I felt like the dictator of a banana republic who had to be protected from the wrath of an angry, vengeful citizenry. My Interceptor loaner was a low-key delight. Despite a threateningly deep exhaust note, the bike was as easy and undemanding to ride as a bike half its size. The Interceptor's clutch was light and the power moderate, but enough to maintain 130 kilometers an hour, though the wind blast from the upright riding position was a workout for the abs. But more interesting than the bike itself was my growing understanding of the ebb and flow of Indian traffic. I thought back to my initial perception of what I'd witnessed on the roads when I arrived in India, that it was pure madness. It's mayhem, all right, there's no need to play footsies with the truth. But there's logic to it. The language of the road, when you think about it, is the only universal language in a country with more than 20 official spoken languages, and, at least if you're Hindu, between 33 and 330 million gods. That's not a typo. I was thinking about this while riding on the highway, and right when I wondered if there was a god for unsignaled lane changes, I'm sure there is, I looked to my left and saw a car close enough for me to swing my knee out and touch its front fender. But I'd seen enough not to panic. I gently veered towards the concrete median wall, and the car passed within my lane without incident. The chasm between rich and poor in India is dramatic, and this cultural reality is reflected on the road. The four-lane highway hosted vehicles as diverse as a Bentley honking along at top speed and a tractor pulling a cart. But there's more at play than just shocking speed differentials. Imagine a shopping mall parking lot the weekend before Christmas, and you'll begin to understand the complex dynamic of Indian traffic flow. The painted lines on the road suggest 4 lanes. These suggestions are ignored. Now take those 4 lanes, add the shoulder for 5, more on that in a minute, and then squeeze everyone in. And what do you have? 5, do I hear? 6 lanes. 6 lanes to the woman on the scooter, 7 going once, 7 lanes to the man on the tuk-tuk. Now back to that 5th lane, the shoulder. It's a full-speed, don't dare stop on it lane, in addition to functioning as a pathway for vehicles traveling in the opposite direction, the wrong direction. Imagine my shock whizzing along on the shoulder at 120. I fit in, a little too well, when I met a gasoline tanker nose to nose. No need to panic. 7 lanes squeezed into 6 lanes on the 4-lane highway, and nobody so much as raised a furry eyebrow. The key to traveling Indian roads is this, the thumb, because this pushes a button that sounds the horn. And the horn is how Indians talk to each other. That's not how we do it over here. In the decadent West, the thumb is used to tell drivers, they're assholes. Veer into my lane, asshole. Don't dim your high beams, asshole. Tailgate, asshole. We live behind tinted windows so we don't have to make eye contact. Because in North America, eye contact while driving is as gross as licking the seats at a Waffle House. But not in India, and not because there's no Waffle House. Waffle houses? If Indians drove like North Americans, there'd be carnage. On the back of trucks in India, and this is every truck, in large script, you'll see the words, honk horn, flash lights. In other words, talk to me, let me know you're there, and I'll make room for you. Horn honking in India is nonstop, but it's not aggravating to hear because it's not motivated by aggravation. We in the West could learn a lot about Indians about how to drive. I did not expect that. This segment is brought to you by Best Western Hotels and Resorts. Welcome back to El Camino. Before we set out on a ride, there wasn't much of a chance to talk to my fellow riders. But a few hours outside Delhi, we stopped to chew the fat. And in doing so, all of my preconceptions were confirmed. No matter where you go, no matter where you ride, motorcyclists, far more often than not, are pretty great people.
My name is Pratik.
I'm Subbu.
Shaurya.
Amit Palia.
My name is Samir.
It's Ayan Chaudhary.
So I ride a Bonneville T120.
I ride a Harley Street 750.
I ride a Honda CBR 250.
That's the Fat Boy 2016 model.
Harley has always been a childhood dream.
I love that bike. It's just so good looking.
Yeah, I'm the only one on the Enfield. I think no better motorcycle to ride in India than a Royal Enfield.
So why do you do it?
Because it's fun.
I feel good. I feel alive while riding this bike.
Exactly the same as you will feel in Toronto or any part of the world. It's amazing,
That says a lot for the excitement or the passion that's now in the country for what I would call leisure biking. I don't know much about pleasure. If it's pleasurable, it's not. Big bikes get hot. So I don't know about the pleasure part, but it's definitely leisure biking.
In India, with the weather conditions that we have here and the immense amount of heat that the Harley generates, it becomes difficult riding it throughout the years.
You've got the most badass boot.
Ah, thank you. This just saves my calves from burning out on my bike.
Yeah!
On the ride out of Delhi this morning, I'd passed my unofficial test. It went something like this. It was determined that I was a decent enough rider to choose the cause of my own death, which meant I was riding back to Delhi. No tourist exemption. It was time to ride straight into the belly of the beast. Entering Delhi is the equivalent to rappelling into the mouth of an active volcano. The closer you get, the more serious it gets. On the outskirts of the city, I saw a warning sign, a graphic of a motorcycle with 3 people sitting on the seat scarred with a bright red X. I'd been in India long enough that I laughed in my helmet. Who were they trying to kid? 3 people on a bike in India is the Western equivalent to riding solo. Sure enough, at the first roundabout, I witnessed the outrageousness of urban Indian motorcycling at its most glorious. I'm following my guide, who's on another Royal Enfield, like my life depends on it. Because my life depends on it. I have absolutely no idea where I am or where I'm going. The road leading to the roundabout is paved. We're moving quickly, passing everything. A Jaguar, a BMW, a man pushing 20-foot lengths of angle iron on a primitive cart. And motorcycles by the thousand. My guide was properly going for it. He didn't look back for me. In India, you never look back. We entered the roundabout and the surface turned to dirt, wavy, deeply eroded dirt. I'd guess between 75 and 100 vehicles were in the roundabout, and everyone is trying to wiggle through, and everyone is next to someone trying to get on the other side of them. A timid rider or driver could easily become stuck and orbit the roundabout for the rest of their natural lives. Just imagine Uranus orbiting the sun forever. That just never gets old. On top of all this, sitting on the ground in the roundabout is a cow. We need to have a conversation about cows. Cows are sacred in India, and don't they know it? They roam the streets with the obliviousness of teenagers in love. They sleep wherever they want, and they only move if they see a spot where they can inconvenience more people than if they stayed put. I asked locals what happens if you hit a cow. No, they said, don't hit a cow. To which I said, I don't mean intentionally, I mean, what if you hit a cow by accident? To which they said, no, don't hit a cow. From these exchanges, I gleaned the following. Hit a cow through negligence, and you'll be stoned to death. Hit a cow when the fault lies completely with the cow, and you'll be stoned to death. Few things in India are this straightforward. Don't hit a cow. I didn't hit the cow, but I was still in the roundabout. I found myself next to a man on a small motorcycle. Sitting in front of the man and bracing himself on the handlebar was a child, 5 or 6 years old. Behind the man is a woman wearing a stunning red and purple sari. And because a long garment isn't conducive to straddling a motorcycle, she's sitting side saddle. In her arms is an infant. There's more. The man is riding with one hand and texting with the other while the woman is on the phone. One hand on the phone, one hand on the baby. Nobody is wearing helmets. Everyone is wearing open-toed shoes, except the baby who's wearing whatever infants wear on their feet in India. I need to get to the other side of the man and his family so I can follow my guide. So I reach out and touch the man's throttle hand with my clutch hand. I smile and point to where I want to go. He looks at me like I'm an infant. And then in a flash, the man is on my other side. And I have a new obstacle thwarting my way. A man in headphones is pedaling a bicycle and reading a novel. I was impressed. Who even reads anymore? This segment is brought to you by GP Bikes. Welcome back to El Camino. My guide upped the pace. I was sure he'd forgotten me. Following someone in Indian traffic is more complex than you'd imagine. It's not simply a matter of locking under their taillight and keeping pace. With so many vehicles competing for space, passing opportunities form and dissolve instantaneously. To keep pace with my guide meant keeping an eye on him while weaving across the pathway to find a clear way ahead. And then I lost him when I was squeezed between a truck, a car, a bunch of other cars, and a few dozen two-wheelers. I didn't have the luxury of panic. I dropped the Enfield down 2 gears, muscled a car out of the way, and sprinted. Minutes passed like lifetimes. I was utterly without fear or hesitation. I was the maddest of all the madmen on the road. Then I spotted him, just as he plunged off the road down into an underpass. I still don't know how the skinny tires of the Enfield held the road, but I slithered down and into the abyss with my leader just a speck on the horizon. To describe the underpass I dropped into, it's necessary to call upon Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, 3 Greek brothers with Trumpian ambitions. To divvy up the universe, they drew straws. Zeus got the heavens, Poseidon the seas, and poor Hades got stuck with the underworld, for which he blamed his parents. And it was in the underpass that I came nose to nose with Hades. Plumes of dust and grit were backlit by the setting sun, and 100 or more cows, bikes, pedestrians, trucks, and tuk-tuks were jostling for position. I was riding on the sidewalk when I met a motorcycle coming at me on the sidewalk. I performed this action and made it past. Then I jumped the bike back onto the road, sailed past the hind end of a cow, and nearly wedged myself under a truck headed the other way. I was that close to booking a one-way ticket to the underworld. And in that instant, I wasn't afraid. I felt gloriously alive. My synapses shot fireworks into the skies. I let out a whoop. I'd done it. I'd climbed Everest. Thank you for watching El Camino. Clothing was provided by Importations Tebow. El Camino has been brought to you by Best Western Hotels and Resorts. Wherever life takes you, Best Western is there. Garnet Motorcycle Boots, championship quality since 1962. And by Spring Toronto Motorcycle Super Show.